We are the Marvellos. That is where we can. Is this an audio?
Yes. It's my sound.
Here's to Marvin.
Marvin.
So we're very happy. Sure. I haven't seen you guys in synagogue in a very long time. Really long. Yeah. Thank you. John, nice to meet you.
Marvin, not here, Mama. I got him.
Yo!
We got ready. Please, everybody, take a seat and sit down. So we'll just sit down. And maybe y'all will sit down.
I'm Heidi Diamond.
Oh, Heidi, this is Heidi Diamond.
Hi, Jane. Here's Jane Warren.
Good to see you. Glad you made it. True word.
Directions I got from Google. With her laryngitis sign that everybody's seeing here, and her dear husband, Jerry Glee, said, we're not going to be able to eat with us tonight. Hello, it's Marvin. Anybody want to talk to him?
And more during the recession sale. Start with the absolutely biggest selection of men's 3D suitings of Dacron Hollywood Rayon Horsehair blends. Ready for $10. This Monday only, just $159.99. On Tuesday they'll be $165.99. $129.99, but without the pass. Match up with great values in men's socks in basic colors of violet, lime, and yellow ochre.
Tell your name, your story, light the candle, and put it in.
Well, I was really young at the time when I started with Abramson Himelfarb. I was a rep at Wash FM, but Marvin, for some reason, loved my voice and invited me to come to the Wednesday sessions at Bias Recording. Every Wednesday we all sat on a couch and we would be waiting there until he gave us the Woody spot or the Dreyfus spot or whatever. I did both, but I did this Dreyfus spot. You know how he just loved to laugh. So I did a Dreyfus spot. It was, I would just say, if I can say this and this and this and this in so many seconds, I win something. And the announcer said, yes, you do. So I started saying it, but burst out laughing in the middle of it because I couldn't hold it. And that was the take he used. That was the and I got residuals over and over again. It was wonderful. But the greatest part of it was that I used to do the Woody spots, and I would know which vendor was coming up. If I didn't do it, at least I knew which vendor was coming up. Then I went to Arlene and Lois and would pitch whichever vendor they were doing. I had to,
Hasn't changed a bit.
So I will light this candle for Marvin's laughter. Oh, I'm sorry, the laughter went out.
They still are. And they
Oh, maybe I do that?
You're going to like both of us.
The candle for life.
All right, so the backstory is I am like in my early 20s and I'm an airhead. I've come out of art school. I had a sort of a decent art job and then I had a really crappy art job and then I got another one at an ad agency, but that wasn't going too well. And so now I have all these friends and I get a call and I go, there's a job opening at Abramson Himelfarb, which was like a big deal agency at the time. And I'm like, well, what's the job? It's head of production. It's production manager of the creative department. I'm like,
wow.
Right. And they're like, no, you got to go interview for it. So I'm like, I'm doing it. So I get my resume together, which I make sound as good as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Get the interview. I get in there in front of David Abramson, who is like all business.
Mm-hmm.
And he's asking me a lot of questions. And I sort of like knew the subject, but I had no idea how to do what he was talking about. And so with all the confidence that you would have probably counseled me to have, I said, David, what you need to know, I'm going to do this job. So he said, okay, you need to go see Marvin. we go see Marvin, and all Marvin wants to know is like, am I a good person? And we're laughing, we're having a great time. So now I have the job. Fast forward, I'm 2 years into it. I'm handling the most expensive, important job, and it's got a deadline. And my supplier is like, woo, and I am loaded for bear because I got to make this deadline.
Right.
And they call me, the supplier's on the line that you've been trying to get a hold of. So I just run into somebody's office, pick up the phone, and I'm having this heated discussion of you will, and I need, and you better, and blah, blah, blah. And Marvin comes by the door, so now I'm on the phone, I'm standing up because I'm, you know, I'm like fighting the fight, okay. And here's the door, or here's the door. And Marvin, who's, you know, the name on the door of this agency, comes by, and he looks in, he gets it immediately what's going on, because I'm like, I'm looking out the door, and I'm like, he goes by. I'm still looking out the door, and I see him go. Past the door. And in my head, I'm like, what? And so I'm still looking at the door because I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Exactly.
But he's just done that.
Yeah, right.
The next thing that happens is he comes crawling past the door and he goes like that.
Oh.
And then he goes past the door like that. And I got the message. And this is Marvin. Marvin was telling me by doing that, of course the lightness that came through was, I have confidence in you. Let's have some balance here. This isn't the end of the world.
Right.
I've got your back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
That was Marvin.
That's-
And he was just,
That's
he was
wonderful.
larger than life. He was just, and
That's
he
really
did that for a
wonderful.
lot of people.
Yeah.
So, you saw my story, so I'm gonna thank Marvin for hiring me because all I had was really a portfolio of drawings from art school. And I learned so much from him, and I learned so much about warmth and humor. And I got to know him after I left there. I got to know him, as I said, a time or two in California. I went to Cleo's with him. I saw him in New York. I didn't see him enough. And so, Marvin, I'm going to miss you.
No, I don't really have any good Marvin stories. I just know he was really loud. I remember his kids used to come into the office and we all used to babysit for them. I do remember that. And I've told Lois this many times, my life changed when I was hired at this job by Lois and Mike Heinberg. And my connection to them, I can't ever trade that for anything. And this means a lot, and I remember Marvin, and those days were great. And yeah, I mean, it's a fabulous, just in terms of that. So anyway.
Well, I guess when I think of Marvin, because when I was hired by Michael, and I didn't interview with anybody. So he just said, come to work here. So, but I remember coming in, I remember Marvin's office. I remember he had that big Peter Max mural.
Yeah, that's
that everybody was doing the papers in those days on their wall. And I remember that he had that on his wall, which I think really said Marvin. I mean, that's in terms of who he was and everything. And I think actually for all of us, what Arlene was saying, you know, we were all young and starting out in our careers, and so I think it was a really important time, and the connections that we made there, I think, were important for all of us, because that's where we were starting out, and we all learned a lot. We all learned a lot from the things that we did, and we did a lot of things we didn't know how to do, but we just did them. And we've talked about that a lot. We just did them.
So I came to Abramson. I've been working at Weitzman. But I just remember that infectious laugh of his, because our office was next to his. And so you could always hear that coming through the walls, you know, just that wonderful, joyous laughter of his. So.
Thank God.
I just wrote the checks.
I just wrote the checks.
Wrote the checks, paid the bills. No, Timmy paid Marvin's bills. I will say one thing, one comment that Marvin made. When it was David, Tim, Marvin, and myself in the office talking business about the employees and everything. And David said, he has to be nice to me because I know where the bodies are buried. And Marvin said, hell, he designed a graveyard.
John Dowling, worked with Marvin while I was at WASH with Rini. And I was what was often laughingly referred to as talent. I don't have a thigh slapper. You think about your time with Marvin, and I couldn't come up with that one big payoff story. What Marvin was 1,000 continuous, you had to be there moments. He'd come by WASH, he produced a commercial there, he was insane. I loved the stuff that he was running on my radio program, because 50% of the commercials in my show were Abrams and Himelfarb.
Yeah.
Yes. WASH had a Christmas party every year. We always did a Christmas party tape. And so for that year's Christmas, which I guess it was 71, 72, I decided to do a tribute to Marvin Himelfarb as my contribution to the party tape. And it was just a montage of bites of his apartment and condo commercials with a little bit of me thrown in, and made fun of him. It poked fun at Marvin. I did this in the sincere hope that the account executive would play it for him. And Marvin called me. And, hi, John, I got a commercial for you. Come on. And the next recording session, I went down. Went in the studio, gave me the script. It was for Thousand Oaks condominiums, and I was the obnoxious DJ. That was right there on the script. The only direction I got from Marvin in the course of the whole commercial was, John, could you be a little more obnoxious? I know you can give me more obnoxious than that. And I did. Everybody knows how to be an obnoxious disc jockey if you're in the business. I guess I was obnoxious enough because I became part of the Marvin Himelfarb stock company, which is heaven on earth. It was, I would look around and I'd say, what the hell am I doing here? Because there was all of this talent, great talent, talented Marvin. Like Reed, he would pick people out that didn't know that they had wonderful radio voices, and then go into the studio and be in hysterics. And it was this chaotic cyclone of creativity. Pleasing Marvin was one of the best things you could do. Marvin always ran the music under a recording. Most producers, read it dry, I'll drop the music in later. No. That's, the person in the shoes don't match when you do that. You've got to react to the music. You've got to be into it. If you're good, you're talking to the beat. You're right there. And Marvin understood that. Even if it was something where you had to talk up to a jingle and you might miss what we call the post, you might miss it 16 times. When you finally nailed it, he had to take. He wasn't so lazy that he would say, no, just do it and I'll drop it in later and make a timeout. Little things like that. And the other thing that we had in common, and I loved him for, was that he got the idea that it was a positive for him to be kidded. He told me, if you remember, every Dreyfuss Brothers spot, every condo, every apartment spot had a live tag.
Yes.
Take Quincy Orchard Road to Clapper Road, left on First Field, then turn right, management by Dreyfuss Brothers. He told me the reason he did that was to give the disc jockey a chance to make fun of the commercial. He said, if the disc jockey makes fun of the commercial, it makes it more memorable for the listener and it gives me 10 or 15 seconds of free airtime.
Right.
But of course, the acme, the pinnacle, the pièce de résistance, Vincent Price.
Price, Lauren Bacall, Joseph Ross.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
Lauren Bacall was
right.
in New York. He said, John, I'm sorry. He said, Lauren Bacall, very touchy. I got to go to New York. But Vincent Price was in town doing Oscar Wilde at Ford's Theater. And Marvin said, I'm going to get Vincent Price to do American Service Center. Marvin told me, Marv Brooks said, Marvin, I can do Vincent Price. But Marvin went for the real thing. And Vincent Price, you've never met a sweeter, more gentle, a wonderful human being. Couldn't have been more gracious. I mean, I was scared to death. Marvin, God love him, wrote ensemble commercials for just about everybody in the rep company. There were like 5 or 6 of us commercials because he wanted to get us all in the studio with Vincent. So we did this, and I did mine, and Marvin said, "Don't leave. I'm gonna need you later." And I went back in. He hands me a script. It is me and Vincent Price. Holy shit. I scanned the commercial, and 2 things struck me. Number one, I'm doing all the cell copy, and I'm interrupting Vincent Price. Number 2, I've got the last line in the commercial. This doesn't make any sense. I'm doing a commercial with Vincent Price. I don't get the outline. So we sit down, and we go through it. And somewhere, Marvin rolled a tape on this entire session. In addition to doing the commercials individually, he had Bob Dawson just roll a master tape and left the mics open. I hope that's around somewhere. God. So, here's the deal. I'm the nervous announcer, which is a perfect typecasting. And I introduced him to Vincent Price, and all Vincent wants to do is talk about Oscar Wilde. And I keep interrupting him, trying to get him to talk about American Service Center and Mercedes-Benz. And I'm doing all the cell copy, and he just keeps getting grumpier and grumpier, trying to talk about Oscar Wilde. And finally, he barks at me, "But what has that got to do with Oscar Wilde?" And my tagline is, "I'm sorry, Mr. Price, I guess I just lost my head." Vincent ad-libs, "No loss." Marvin knew that was coming. He set me up. I mean, I know that's got to be some old vaudeville bit that Marvin knew, that Vincent knew.
Of course.
All of the tension went away. We did a wonderful commercial, and it was just, that's the highlight of my freelancing career. One more thing, just real quick. In 1976, the American Folklife Festival ran all summer on the mall. And Barry, I think you were there for they invited us down to do a live commercial recording session in front of an audience in a tent on the mall. Anybody else, this could have been like listening to paint dry. Marvin had the audience in the palm of his hand, had them screaming with laughter. And finally, this lady comes up to me at the end and she said, "Excuse me?" "Yes." "What channel is he on?" And I thought to myself, "Lady, he's all ours."
I was 19. I was in college. I worked at Bloomingdale's at night. A woman came in and she needed new clothes. I started to chat. "What's your new job?" She told me she had a new job. She was going to be the research director for an advertising agency, and I nearly choked her. And I pitched her right there in Bloomingdale's Young East Cider department, "Hire me, hire me, hire me." And I tell my grad students now, I tabulated research questionnaires by hand for American Service Center, and literally I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then when the receptionists would go out for a cigarette break, or frankly they were going out to get high, I would pitch in and I would be the receptionist. And David would come in with Marion Barry, and Marvin would come in with the likes of many of you guys. And so I dedicate this to the Coolidge boys, my dad and Marvin.
Yeah.
Go Barry.
Go Barry. Go Barry.
Go Barry. Go
Go
Barry.
Barry.
I'm going as fast as I can.
Don't go too fast.
Don't be late.
Don't be early.
Yeah, first of all,
We won't know what to do.
I want to apologize. Apparently, unbeknownst to me, I was known as somewhat irresponsible. That's it. And apparently, I did not take deadlines seriously. Sorry, Sheila. Sheila, I'll just tell you a side about Sheila. Sheila at one point to make a point to me took her shoe and nailed a job order to the door of my office. Because right after she had come and told me how important it was that she needed this spot, she came back 5 minutes later, and the copy secretary, Martha, she says, "Where's Barry?" Martha says, "Oh, he went to lunch." So she went, "Ah!" Somehow managed to find a nail. I think she spit it. And she whacked this thing, and I come back and I'm like, whoa. Damn. I shouldn't have had that other drink. Anyway, much like John, I do not have one single knee-slapping, unforgettable moment with Marvin. So I'm going to tell you there were times he yelled at me, but it like improved my life. Like, okay, when he went to hire me, I was going through like a downstretched job-wise. It had been a couple of years. So he says, if we get the Woody's account, you're hired. You want the job? So he calls me up, like a couple of weeks later. Okay, we got the Woody's account. Let's talk about salary. So he says, what do you want? And I told him, and at that point I would have said $1. Anything to work for you. And I quoted him a figure. Oh God, I think I quoted him 12. He starts yelling at me, and I'm thinking, okay, 10. He says,
I was 19, I made 9.
he says to me, "No, asshole, you're worth more than that. Don't sell yourself short." I said, so I'm thinking, okay, 13. Norman says, "You're making 16. And I'm like, 18? At any rate, Marvin haggled like crazy and got me to raise my salary, so he won that one. Then the next time he yelled at me, that I totally remember, was, okay, we had been working on a huge Woody's project, and I was up for like 36 straight hours. What happened was Marvin liked what he saw so much that he said to me, "Take tomorrow off." And I'm like, cool, okay. So I get up the next day and sitting around, and there's no video games back then, so I'm like, I was like the kid who plays hooky and all the other kids are in school, so there's nobody to do anything with, and I'm sitting there and I'm getting bored and bored. Then I'm starting to get a little bit of that feeling you get when you're early in your career and you say, boy, if I take a day off, what if everything works great without me there? I call up Claudia and I said, so Claudia, how you doing today? Is it busy there? And she says, oh yeah. I said, wow, busy. Well, you got everything covered? Yeah, we got it covered. And I'm like, oh shit. I said, well, would it help any if, like, maybe I took a couple of things off your plate? And she says, well, you got today off. I said, yeah, but I could come in for a couple of hours, do a couple of spots, and it's no big deal. She says, okay. So I come in. Now, Claudia's office was over there. My office was over here. And I'm sitting there happily typing away. Typewriters. We had typewriters. All of a sudden, Marvin comes walking by here on his way to Claudia's, and he stops. And he comes back and he looks at me. And I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing? What the hell are you doing here? And I'm thinking, oh shit, I was right. I'm not supposed to be coming back anyway. He started lecturing me about how he knew exactly why I was there. He said, because you think you're not going to have a job, blah, blah, blah. And he said, that's bullshit. He said, when you get a day off, you take the day off. You enjoy it. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. And what will happen is you'll just work yourself to death. And I said, you know what? From that moment on, I have never, ever called in to see what's happening when I've got vacation time. And it's all thanks to Marvin. I can tell you great David stories, too, but... okay, I'll just tell you this one.
One bad, a real good one.
Okay.
I got several.
There were times when David and I, for whatever reason, did not see eye to eye.
Imagine that.
And after this one particular session, there was like an elevator lobby outside the front door of the agency. And David is berating me in front of total strangers waiting to get on the elevator, and he's yelling at me, and he's calling me names. Called me a fucking Jew, and no, he didn't do that. But he was calling me worse things than that. And anyway, but he's yelling at me, and finally I said, okay, David, if you want to take this in your office, that's fine, but don't talk to me that way in front of all these people. I'll talk to you any goddamn way I want. My name is on the door. I said, all right, David, here's what it is. And now keep in mind, I was young and brash and had anger management issues myself. I got to within literally like an inch of his nose. And I said, David, see my right arm? And it was like this. I said, if you say another word, if you breathe another syllable, I'm going to punch you in the stomach so hard that you're going to be on the floor, writhing around and gasping like a fish, so you'll be embarrassed in front of all these people. And I said, please do it. See if I'm serious. And he looked at me and his face got purple, literally, and he's got little flecks of foam on his mouth. And I'm waiting for him to breathe, because I meant it. I was going to do it. And I said, I might go to jail, but it'll be so worth it to see you on the floor. And finally, he just went, and he turned on his heel, and he walked in, and he slammed the door so hard that the A and the B from Abramson fell. Now, at this point, I'm pumped. I've got the adrenaline going. I go storming back to my office. And I go in my office, and I pick up my chair, and I throw it against the wall, and I take my desk, I turn it over, and I'm kicking stuff and yelling, fuck you, fuck him. And Claudia comes running past my door, and she stops, and she says, you're not fired, stay there. And she goes running on. And I'm like, I don't care if I'm fired. Fuck David. I've had it, blah, 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 blah. And about 20 minutes later, she comes back, she says, okay, well, here's the deal. You and David are not to have any interaction between you. And I'm like, so we're being separated like in first grade? So we were sent to our respective corners, and she said, just, you two do not talk to each other. And you're wondering where Marvin is in all this. Well, about 5 minutes after that, he comes walking up, and he tentatively pokes his head around my door. And he looks in, and he looks at the destruction in my office. And I looked at him, and I said, what? And he just says, what a mess! He's cracking up. Funny ending to the story with David. About a week later, I go in the men's room, and David walks into the bathroom, and I'm like, oh shit, okay. Well, there's a whole wall he could have done, and he comes right next to me. And I'm like, oh God, he wants to start this again. So I'm ignoring him, I'm not saying anything, and turn toward the head for the sink to wash my hands. And he says, you know what the biggest disappointment for me is, Barry? And I'm like, okay, I'll bite. No, David, what was the biggest disappointment for you? He goes, that you weren't big enough to just come up to me and say, hi, David, how you doing? Okay, there's a trick here, but I'll bite. I'm like, you want to start it again? Okay. So I said, all right. Hi, David, how you doing? And with that big David smile, he claps me on the shoulder and says, I'm fine, thank you, Barry. And he walks away. And that was the end of it. We were fine after that. And that's my story. And by the way, when I mentioned about Marvin with his hair on fire, obviously that was a different hot tub. It was later, it was like after he had gone out to the coast. Look for it on YouTube. Marvin was doing like a lifestyle piece. And he was in this hot tub, and he had a glass of wine, and there was candles behind him. All of a sudden, his hair's doing a Michael Jackson. And he's laughing. Anyway, it's on YouTube. Look up Marvin Himelfarb Hair on Fire.
Different than pants on fire.
You didn't do it, Kim? All right. Is somebody doing, like, I heard somebody singing Hebrews.
All right,
do a Brooke over the camera.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, that was great.
Well done.
you to be on my
Thank you.
Let's
hear it for the food, come on. And the manager, all right, thank you. I'm staging my thing here. So, can you please leave, because I'm Art Aaron, and I'm half of the Aaron family here. And Marvin and I are very, very close for many, many years, and I do have a slew of stories. And I had a tape, when Marvin moved to Los Angeles, we did Bill O'Connor, the announcer, and I did a retrospective for Marvin, and it was so funny, and I tried to find it. I searched everywhere. I went to Bias Recording to find it. I went through all their tapes and just couldn't find it. It was hysterically a retrospective of a lot of the spots that he did, and as you mentioned, one of the funniest parts was when he did the Lauren Bacall. He was doing this. He told Bob to record the entire session. He wanted everything recorded in the Lauren Bacall session, and so he's directing Lauren Bacall, and he's telling her, no. This is how I want you to do it. This is right. I want you to do it. And it sounded like he was coming on to her, And she's going, oh my God, Marvin, stop. Are you kidding me? Please. No. I'm not coming on to you. I'm not at all coming on to you. So that was really funny. And one of the really cool things about what Marvin did, there was an after strike, if you remember.
I will.
And Marvin was still having to do Woody spots, and so he was bringing in Alan off the street. And he did this audition with this woman who was completely drunk on her ass. She was completely plastered. She was saying, okay, now I want you to say, come now to Woodward and Lothrop. And she'd go, no, Woodward and Lothrop. It was hysterically funny, and Marvin was like, so one of the really great things about Marvin, and he was a very magnanimous person, and Bill O'Connor pointed this out to me, is that there was a guy named Ronald Dawson. Ronald Dawson was an old guy, very old actor, and in the Wednesday sessions at Bias, that we were all there, he would bring Ronald Dawson in to do a spot. And he would never use it, but he would always pay him because the guy had no work. And Marvin was very hard. It was a very heartwarming thing that Marvin did to be able to give this guy a job and give him money and so forth. And that was hysterical. What was hysterical is that we were coming back from Nashville, doing a session one time in Nashville, and I tried to clear my sinuses, and I got Bell's palsy for a moment, and my face froze. And I turned to Marvin and said to him, he was sitting there, and I said, Marvin? I said, I think I'm having a stroke. He said, what? I said, I think I'm having a stroke. And he stood out and had the entire plane in complete hysterics. And he was like, wait, no, my friend's having a stroke. And the entire plane was freaking out as we started to descend, and they had the doctors looking at me, and all of a sudden my ears popped. And I was like, never mind. So I must say that I knew Marvin very well once he not only was here, but when he went to LA. David Landsberg, if you remember, when Marvin moved to Los Angeles, he didn't have a gig. He did not have a job. And he went out, and we did a lot of work, freelance work for him, and David helped him get a gig at KRP in Cincinnati. He was loved David, and David was the little Jewish nab. He was like, you're living in Orchard? You remember that? And he was very much in love with David, and David helped him. And then Marvin came back, and Jane will tell you this story when he.
You tell us.
Well, Marvin came when my daughter was born. My daughter Emily was born. Marvin came to the hospital, was in the out in the waiting area.
Oh, I can tell that story.
Yeah, tell that story. You tell that story.
So my mother would come, and at that time, you didn't have like open visiting hours, The only one who could really come in and go whenever they wanted to was the father of the child. So my mother was waiting out in the lobby, and she'd become friends with other grandmothers out there, during a couple of days that I was in the hospital. And the elevator opens up at Sibley Hospital, and out walks this man, crazy, with balloons and a teddy bear and flowers, and he walks up to the front desk and says something to them, and all the people in the waiting room are like looking, going, "Oh my God, who's that? Who's that?" And he starts yelling, "I am the father! I am the father!" My mother's from Iowa. She's a farm girl from Iowa. "Oh my God, who's married to him?" Well, I'm in there with my new baby. I think I was even breastfeeding, and the door opens. And there's Marvin with all this stuff, and he sits down, and we're chatting, and all of a sudden my mother opens up the door. You could just see her face, just. Who is he?
That crazy man.
That crazy man. She called him the kook. She would always say, "Remember that kook came in here?"
Well, I spoke with Marvin, probably about 6 months ago, and we were going to get together, he was a big part of my life. He was a big part of all of our life, and I just want to say, we miss you, Marvin, and we know that you're here.
Write them a note.
There's one other story I just want to tell, which I think is great. Marvin was in LA. Every once in a while, he'd come and spend the night at our house. He would have to visit, and he would spend the night. And our son at that time was in middle school one time. And Marvin came late after he did some work or something, and we stayed up till wee hours of the morning, just laughing and talking down in our living room. And then he got up early and he left, and my son came down the stairs the next day, kind of yawning and scratching his head. He says, "Is Gilbert Godfrey?"
And I had many jobs at Abramson Himelfarb. I started as the receptionist, which Lois tells me I was the worst receptionist in history.
You don't want to call me Mr. Dowlands?
I might have. And two things stand out to me about Marvin, and they're kind of two sides of a coin, if you will. And one of them is not the funny side. It's another side about Marvin that I discovered when I was the traffic manager. And at that point, as the traffic manager, one of the things you had to do was you had to get scripts of all of the commercials that were recorded. You had to put them in a binder and date them, and I think in some cases you actually had to listen to the spot and make sure that they were accurate. There was a script, I couldn't find it. And I didn't know what to do. The copywriter didn't have it, or didn't have the current one. The secretary in the creative department didn't have it. So I thought, oh, what can I do? I'll ask Marvin. But if you remember Marvin's office, aside from the Peter Max wallpaper, you might remember the piles of shit and crap and stuff and tapes and video, audio tapes in his office. So I remember that, I wasn't in the creative department, so Marvin was a little intimidating to me. But I went in and I said, "Marvin, I'm looking for the script for..." "Oh, no problem." He went in and he picked it right out of the middle of a pile. He knew exactly where it was. That mind was just not funny. It was also like a steel trap. So he really had that ability to be, when he wanted to be, really organized, and I loved that about him. And the other thing I loved was his kind of mischievous side. And I remember that, I can't remember who the client was, but now I was in account services, and I got to like be in
new account pitches and stuff, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I got to be in on the meetings and stuff, and sometimes if the account was important enough, we would do some spec commercials for them. And Marvin would record them, and we would be in the meetings, and, we would listen, and David would say whatever he would say, and whoever was going to be the account person on the account would say whatever they would say. And I remember this one time, it was for a hotel or something, or a motel chain or something, and he says, well, okay, well, listen to this one, and he threads the reel, and it was reel to reel back then. And he plays it, and it's this hilarious commercial for the No-Tell Motel. Was it Holiday Inn? And it was like this whole takeoff on people who would go to the motel for trysts. And, no one would tell about the motel. And needless to say, this did not get paid for the client, but the pitch team was like on the floor. We were laughing. It was so wonderful. And it was just his way of being crazy and mischievous, and also like breaking the ice, because we all worked really, really hard. And especially with things like that, you would stay late, or you would do whatever you needed to do to get everything together. And I just remember appreciating that so much about Marvin, is that he just really, I often saw only the back of him because he was so fast. But I really, really appreciated his laugh, and even his back was very expressive. And I want to light this candle for you, Marvin. You are indeed here, I know that you are, and I love you just like everyone else did, and I wish I knew how to say it in Yiddish, but I don't.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov, you're in a better place, and come back when you're ready.
Anybody remember the conference room table that got broken?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? The big granite one?
Yeah.
Do you remember how it got broken?
No. It was
No.
a Vela.
What?
It was a Vela. Anybody speak that much Yiddish?
There was something really good that happened, and what's terrible is I can't remember what the really good was. But if you remember, our office was shaped like this. David was in the corner, Marvin was here, and I was here next to David after Ron Mitchell left, or was gone. And so I can hear everything going on. It's August. David is in, where's David in August? Martha's Vineyard, every August. And Marvin is having the time of his life in his office, celebrating something he just got news on the phone. I don't know whether we got an account, whatever. And he's out in the hall with the Marvin. Remember the dancing and the singing and the carrying on? And he winds up at my doorway like this. Well, I had a leg injury and I had a cane in my office. And he comes in there doing this routine, picks up my cane, and does like this, and goes out the door into the hall and starts shuffling down the hall. And I jump up and say, what in the hell is going on? And he's laughing and carrying on. He goes all the way the length of the hall, past the receptionist desk. I know those of you who work there remember the layout. He goes into the conference room, and in one bound, I don't know how he did it, he jumps and he gets up on top of that granite table, except it's supported by two pillars on the end. He hits the end beyond the support, and the whole end of it breaks off. That's how that table got broken. Marvin, leaps up and goes dancing out. And we're staying there looking at that table going, Jesus Christ, now what do we do? And somebody says, somebody's got to tell David. Marvin called David. What do I do when he gets back? I said, no, we can't wait till he gets back. That's not the way you work with David. And so I got nominated to call David. And I called David, long distance call, and David listens to me for a minute, and he says, I want that damn thing fixed by the time I get back. And I don't know how we did it. Somebody was authorized, Bill, who stepped out, may have been the one who was authorized to pay for it or something. And we got your table. David came in, never said a word to anybody. It was fixed. So that was one of the Marvin things that he would do. And I don't remember him ever saying anything cruel or mean about anybody. David's in that story. But so for Marvin being the most kind, wonderful, thoughtful person that we've endured probably in any jobs we've ever had, Yeah. His soul will be at rest.
You're here.
Just so you know,